Hi, again, I'm Steve Coyne with BIFMA. Thank you for joining us for a webinar on BIFMA, the next level of generation of sourcing sustainable materials. Today, we're going to talk about the new version of Level, that being version 2024. It was just released, as it sounds, and I will be walking through a number of slides on this. We do encourage questions. If you want to put any questions in the Q&A, please do so. And I'll answer those at the end of the session. So thanks again for joining us, and we'll get started. So first of all, I want to give you a little history about Level and where it came from. This has been around for quite a while now, started in 2010. Our prior version of Level was in 2019, and this is all the E3 standards. So there's a standard called E3. That's the sustainability standard. Level is the program for certification. I won't go into any more detail on that because Level is kind of where the rubber meets the road and where people are normally doing their specifications, things like that, and really thinking about furniture that way. So 2019 is the prior version. You'll see a number of people, actually all the companies right now are still using the 2019 version, but just coming out recently is the 2024 version. So that's what we're going to talk about today. Kind of going through a number of things that the standard and the certification covers. First of all, it is a multi-attribute certification. So if you're familiar with certifications such as Cradle to Cradle, Living Product Challenge, all of those things, that's kind of along the same lines. This one's specific for furniture. Covers the environment, health and well-being, and social benefits as well. The social piece being the people. We did try to follow some guiding principles. We went through and said we want to keep the standard as it was in the past in terms of connecting to green building standards like USGBC. We also wanted to go more results oriented. So if you think about a lot of certifications, we still have that piece about policies and things like that, but we wanted to simplify it and make it more about the results, and you'll see that in a little bit. Entry level is still level 1. We'll go through what that all means in a minute, but ultimately we wanted to make sure that people, even small companies, have a chance to play in this, not just the big players that have maybe more resources. The big one, I think that's going to be the most interesting for this group and the designers involved, is the clarity on certification levels. Some of the feedback we got, I'll go into this in a little bit, but the idea is to try to make sure that people who are specifying a different level, it's going to go up from 1 to 4, you'll see that in a minute, that they can understand the difference between level 1 and level 4. And then finally, harmonize with industry demand. We know sustainability changes. We know that there's certain things that do stay the same, and we wanted to make sure that we were balancing those as well. That said, we're going to go through the tiers that are involved. So when I say tiers, that's kind of if you're not getting certified, but if you're being certified by a third party, and that would be an auditor comes in and looks at your product, looks at your factory, all those different things, that's going to be where you say level. So you're going to hear me say level most of the time. But ultimately, that tier 1 is going to go through and give people a baseline, right? That's a foundational piece with the kind of the start of the journey. Then they move forward and go to level 2, hopefully, so they're not just always staying at the same. And then they're going to go to a basic inventory and assessment. That's getting into, again, I'll get into a little bit more detail, but the mindset is you first got to know your product and get your policies in place. Then you get your procedures and your results happening. This is extremely high level. Just as a teaser, down the road, we will have a new CEU coming out about this that will go into more depth. But the idea really is to build that foundation or off that foundation and start getting into what you're measuring and getting into assessment of things like chemistry, things like what is your greenhouse gas emissions from your factory, those types of items. As you progress, you get into level 3, and there's a pretty big jump here, and that's kind of why we have a pyramid. It's going to narrow down the number of people that are hitting this, and that's going to be in that level of chemical inventory and advanced systems. So the idea there, again, is getting into the details of this now. So this is where, if you think declare labels and looking at red lists, things like that, class-based chemistry, that's typically going to be level 3. And then finally, a new level. We put out a new level, level 4, and that's because this program does grow, and we wanted to make sure that there was kind of another bar that people could go after, or another bar they could reach, and that is this optimization piece. And I'll get into a little bit more detail in a minute on that. I do want to point out, if you're familiar with this program already and you've been around BIFMA and level in the past, it's a pretty big jump. It may not seem like it on the slide to get tier or level 2 in 2024 versus level 2 in 2019. And that was done on purpose. In fact, this is the 6th iteration of the E3 standard level program. And the idea is every time, just like you see in LEAD, just like you see in Cradle to Cradle and some of the others, that we do raise the bar. So level 1's essentially similar to what it has been in the past, again, on purpose. But as you move up, I just want to say that because we expect some of the level 3 products to drop to level 2, because there's a bit of that, like if you were level 3 before and you just kind of stay status quo, you're probably going to end up in more of a level 2. So keep that in mind as you might be thinking about specs or just working in general with this program. But before we go into all the changes, let's talk about what stayed the same. And for those who are new to the program, it is a product-focused program, so it's not a company mindset or a certification. It's not a factory or manufacturing site certification. It's all about the product. It still, again, has the same levels or the same impact areas. And then finally, it's looking at these different stages, if you will, or different variables that make up a good green product. Manufacturing site, of course, the organization that's really selling the product, designing the product, and then, of course, the product itself. Again, for those familiar with the program, it is actually using a lot of the same criteria. In some cases, just raising the bar. Other cases, though, it's exactly the same because, if it's not broke, don't fix it. That's what we did for some of these as well. But again, big difference here. And I think the one that's probably going to make a lot of designers and a lot of owners happy. The previous system worked very well for 14 years, I guess. And it was based on LEAD mindsets. And it was that idea, the more credits you get or more points you achieve, the higher level you get. Number one question I always had was, well, if I got 45 points or even 60 points, does that mean my product has an EPD, or does that mean, or the product I'm speccing, or that it met these chemical requirements, such as an HPD? The answer in the old system was no. The answer in the new system is yes, or at least most likely. So we'll get into that in a minute, but ultimately there are expectations for each of these and they build. So we only have one optional credit. I'll talk about that at the end. But ultimately, it's a requirement. You have to do all these items to get level 1. Then, in addition to those items, you have to do an additional level, such as LCA inventory and chemical inventory, to get level 2. And then you keep moving up, right, to level 3. And then finally, level 4. Level 4, I don't expect a lot of products into that, and that's on purpose. This is supposed to be meant for a number of years, 5 years minimum. And so that's like the climate positive, an EPD, optimized chemistry, etc. So the mindset there, though, again, is building and that they've done all those other things first, level 1, 2, and 3 first. So those are the mindsets that we have. This is just another example that we can go through, and hopefully you can see some of the differences between the mindsets of the 2019 version and raising the bar. Circularity. So we had to address this, and if you think about 2019, and its version, that meant that the standard was probably being built, if you will, or constructed and edited and discussed in 2017. Quite a few years ago, we were already thinking circularity, but probably not to the level we are today. So now the mindset is, okay, what can we do as far as tracking and promoting reuse versus just saying, I have a take-back program. Likewise, you did some greenhouse gas inventory, or the company did, or the product was looking at greenhouse gases in 2019, absolutely. Now it's saying, can it align to the science-based targets? That's what SBTI is. And the idea of just inventorying even more. Likewise, LCAs moving up and really disclosing that, whether it's an EPD or at least maybe it's not a full-fledged EPD, but it's still disclosing what's going on within the LCA. So those are the types of things that were done to, again, raise the bar. So stressing this because I think a lot of people, understandably so, will say, oh, I got level 2 2024. Boy, I used to get level 3. Keep in mind, it might actually seem around the same, and that was done on purpose. Another level that we'll talk about, not level, no pun intended there, but is to talk about the circularity side. and what we did there. So we actually went through and came up with all these different tiers, partly to really address greenwashing and this idea that take-back programs are nice, but are they successful, right? That's ultimately what you're after when it comes to these types of programs, again, results-oriented. So is there a take-back program in place? Great. But what are you tracking? What are you finding out? And hopefully you're finding out that it's successful. And if it is, you're going to keep progressing up those levels. Again, also looking at recyclability, another area that we've seen in it and we're trying to address, not just now in 2025, but in the future, is around what's really being recycled. Even let's just talk like for a quick second about household waste. You know, what are we sending out as a manufacturer? If you have a manufacturer sending out a product and saying that, you know, nylon or something is recyclable, is it being recycled? You know, those types of questions need to be answered. And then that should obviously impact what your design is for future iterations of that design. If you find out that it's theoretically recyclable, but there's actually no infrastructure to recycle it, especially in, say, the major cities, maybe we should be rethinking what that really means in terms of recyclability. So those are the types of mindsets that we had through this whole thing. And again, there's a reward system in place so that people are feeling like they're still making progress, hopefully to achieve the ultimate, which is an active take-back program that's extremely clear to everyone, but also they're seeing the operations and kind of the fruits of their labor in that sense. So that's just one example. We just don't have time to obviously go through all of it. There's a lot of different criteria involved in this. I will be going through more, but I'm just telling you that there's kind of that mindset throughout this entire program of what we're doing. So, mentioned before, level 4, definitely something that we considered, okay, what can we throw at people that frankly, most products, if any, will be able to achieve immediately. Because again, it's not just saying you did one of these things, it's saying you did all of them. Optimized chemistry, so we'll start there. It's a class-based approach. What that means is we're not saying a specific chemical or a specific flame retardant needs to be eliminated. We're actually saying all organophosphates or all organohalogenated flame retardants, which is a lot of fancy words to basically say some of the bad actors or all the bad actors around flame retardants need to be eliminated. All PFAS, again, we're not going to get into the conversation of this list or that list in this case. It's all classes of PFAS. So that's what that optimization of chemistry means. If you're familiar with Healthy Hospital Initiatives or some of the other groups that came out with similar things, Green Science Policy was one who helped us out with this. They've already said these are the classifications of chemicals that we need to remove. Again, not just specific chemistry. Climate positive product. So this product not only has to have great chemistry, it also has to look at putting together a program that not just has an LCA and an EPD and all the verification of a carbon footprint, but also has documented, and there's a couple programs in place. The one we reference is from MIT, that being the Massachusetts Institute of Technology and that group. And it's a very documented program of how to say, I have a carbon footprint and here are things I'm doing as far as helping schools maybe replace lights. That's kind of an old one, but those types of active ways to reduce climate change and come up with positive output of the product overall. So you're kind of taking the negative that it took to make the product and replacing it with some positive things like energy savings, renewable energy, etc. So that's a climate positive product piece. And again, verified by a third party. Then we get into the supply chain auditing. And we brought this in because we're seeing more and more questions, rightly so, about supply chain. We all hear it in the news about tariffs and things like that. Nothing to do with that. It's all about the social side in saying that we know there's high-risk countries. And by we, I mean collectively, our sustainability movement knows this. And the idea is, can we look at those high-risk countries and ensure that we're not sourcing from those countries? Or if we are, because sometimes that's a very broad geographical context. We might have to do we will have to do a third-party audit to see if our particular source there is good or not, as far as forced labor, child labor, all those types of things. So that's essentially what we're after. Just kind of walking through 3 of the majors. There are some other ones that are required for level 4, but those are probably the 3 biggest ones. And again, to do all 3 of those for a particular product is frankly costly, but it's also a lot of work. And in some cases, it's just hard to design in later on. So it might be for new products. So moral of the story there is certainly look at specifying this if you wish, but don't expect a lot of options. All right, so now I'm going to get into just the 3 sections. You've heard about these 3 things before: the environmental, the material health, and the social side. Again, staying at a high level just for the interest of time. The goal is to kind of spend about 25, 30 minutes on this conversation, and then we'll do some Q&A, but there will be more resources as time goes on with these. So air, water, solid waste, these are things that we consider just part of the kind of the way you approach a good product. So, are you emitting anything from an air perspective? Are you using too much water or polluting the water? And again, solid waste, what's going to the landfill. Carbon-related metrics, I think most of us are familiar with those, with the greenhouse gas emissions, measuring those. Circularity, we talked about, responsible packaging, and of course, life cycle assessments. So again, stages for all of these. Most all of these will have a kind of introductory at 1, and then again, progressively moving up to those in higher tier mindsets. Likewise, chemistry, again, if you're familiar with HPDs, declare labels, we're actually harmonizing in this case with these types of groups. So we didn't want, if we have a company out there who's already doing a declare label or doing an HPD label, how can we adopt some of their frameworks and mindsets to essentially make sure that they're not doing like 2 sets of accounting, so to speak. So chemical inventory assessments are extremely important, chemical disclosure. I would look at this if you're really interested in chemistry and kind of pushing people along those lines. It's probably going to be level 3, because again, there's going to be that need to disclose it, to assess it. And then level 4 is optimizing it. Low emitting has been there for really since the beginning of this whole program back in 2010. It's still there. So it's this mindset of, again, kind of a more or less a silver or gold. And that's a requirement, even at level 1, to have a minimum level of indoor air quality or low emitting product. And then it moves up to level 3. Level 4, there's no need to go even higher than that. We figured level 3 would be good enough. And finally, the social impact. There is the health and safety of the people that are making the product. That's certainly important and stays important. We made it a little bit more global in this case because we did feel like the previous version was a bit North American centric. Speaking global, we made sure the supplier code of conduct was looked at from a global lens, and certainly, again, progresses, as we talked about a minute ago. Inclusiveness is still there. That's been there for a long time, as has wellness and community engagement. We did add a little bit more on transparency. Transparency is around the idea of really presenting results in an effective manner. So we see people with ESG reports or sustainability reports or CSR, whatever you wish to call them. But we wanted to outline a little bit more of what was needed in those, and again, progressing its way up as you move up those levels. Here's a scorecard. If you haven't seen one of these before, in the past, it would go through, and for each of those sections, it's a little hard to read, but you can see those sections, and some were prerequisites, some were points, and you'd get your number of points for each of these things. Now it's, again, tier-based. So you can just see level 1. It's, again, meant to be an introductory level, so it's fairly easy. As you progress, of course, more is required. But the nice thing about that is, first of all, you as the designer and the specifier can look at this and be very clear about what's already included. So is an EPD included? Okay, maybe, maybe not, right? But it also gives the, it won't be until tier 4, but it also gives the manufacturer, if they wish, and that's up to them, but they can produce the scorecard and say, well, we actually did tier 3, but we did tier 4 for the LCA EPD side, or whatever the case might be. So the mindset there was twofold. One is they might just say they're level 3 plus, if you will, and go after a couple of these other higher rungs. But ultimately, from a question of like whether this is included or not at certain levels, you'll know right away based on the scorecard. And this is, again, just a generic scorecard, but it really fits for anything once you see the product at top. So circularity, we covered a little bit of this before, but just wanted to show you the progress from a scorecard perspective. So again, it just shows how it's moving up there, and you can see what it's doing. But it's the same really for responsible packaging in some of the other ones as well. Finally, I'll just show you the business conduct piece. So the idea there is we really did want to spend a little bit more time on this idea of making sure we have a responsible supply chain. So this idea of having a policy first, then going into making sure that people, your suppliers, are signing codes of conduct. You're doing kind of that awareness piece, but you're also getting them to sign something, and then moving into, okay, where are my high risks? Have I identified them? Do I have any? Do I have some concern? And if so, now I can go on site and do some assessments. And by the way, that could be a person from the company, or most likely it's going to be an outside party that you're going to hire to be over there doing that work. So now we're going to shift to a little bit more about the marketplace and kind of the outward facing. That was a bit under the hood, if you will, of what the certification is about and what's required for the certification. On the other side of that is we are actively working with these different groups. Canada, for instance, already has in place requirement, all products must be level 2. Again, that's version 2019. We'll have to talk to them about what that looks like. I'm sure it'll say the same for 2024. But ultimately, they're in there. GSA obviously is in a little bit of a transition period, but they've certainly been promoting level for a long time, and at least saying, hey, this is a good recommendation, a good base piece is like a green products guide. Well and Lead we work with often, as well as Living Building Challenge. You can see there some of the numbers we have. Those are growing on an annual basis to work with other groups, be it cities or states or companies, right? It could be a company or it could be an institution of higher learning. Bottom line is we love to work with those, and we'll work with you. So that's kind of an offer right there. I've worked with a number of entities, again, government, non-government, education. And sometimes they'll bring in the entire, or they'll make it simple like Canada did, which I think is extremely effective. They'll just say, hey, I want everything to be level 2. Like, bottom line, that's it. Obviously, that drives the market. And again, you can see from the scorecard what that's actually doing. Others will say, I'm going to, frankly, cherry pick. I'm going to select a few things, and it's going to be around those criteria. So if I go back a minute, they might be very interested in, let's just say 8.41 or something like that, or 8.43. We'll go through that and actually specify that. So we've seen both work, and again, open to either. The one thing is, if people start to get into that kind of cherry picking, then obviously, it can be where the company maybe was doing some of that work, but didn't get to level 3 or whatnot. And therefore, it can be a little more tricky. The one thing we have to combat that is our registry. So if you've not been to our registry, go to level.bifma.org sometime. It's just as it sounds, level.bifma.org. And you can look around and see all the different products. We have over 5,000 products there, categorized by the level that they've achieved, the brand that sells them, and we have this fun category that I've boxed and exploded there is the sustainable criteria. So if a product, this is in the version 2019 right now, but we'll be updating this with version 2024 as products start to be certified to that. So none are yet, but they will be as the year progresses. The bottom line is some people are very interested in any one of those items, low emitting or LCAs or targeted chemical elimination. Easy, click the button. It'll sort through what products meet those criteria. So a very nice way to do it, again, if you're thinking more specifically about a certain item or a certain request. The most popular we see search, the two most popular, low emitting and targeted chemical elimination. Again, that targeted chemical elimination was that healthy hospital criteria, now Practice Green Health, which says, hey, there's no, they've reviewed this for PFAS, they've reviewed it for heavy metals, flame retardants, etc. So easy way to do that. I always caution people, if you do have a product and it's your favorite product and you click on this and it's not there, certainly talk to the manufacturer. In some cases, especially in version 2019, they just didn't go for that credit and get that point. That doesn't mean they don't have it. They just didn't apply for it. So it's still worth talking to the manufacturer, but at the same time, this is a good way to start down that journey of kind of what's what. All right. As you drill down in this registry, though, and say you just picked whatever criteria you wanted, or maybe you just wanted to pick, tables or systems, you're going to get into this. This is Indiana Furniture. This is for everybody. So you see Han over there as well. Ultimately, you can start to get into the product itself. And I won't go through this whole thing. It's worth just clicking and seeing, but it will give you some alignment with the lead and other, and others, as far as green building goes. It'll also give you contact information in the certificate. So a lot of information behind there. That's where we see, the information held as far as what it can do or what the product has in terms of sustainability attributes. So ultimately, hopefully that motivates you to think about specifying level. That's the goal of this. We feel like, and we being BIFMA, but we know very biased, but we also know that this is the most popular for furniture. So we love working with Cradle to Cradle and Living Product, and there are a couple Living Product and Cradle to Cradle certified furniture products, but ultimately most people are using Level just because it was tailor-made for our industry. Think about when you specify whether you want to go, again, more of a specific level and just keep it simple like that. I mentioned before, 2019 is going to have those first three, and then 2024 is going to have 1 through 4. Still stay in alignment with a lot of the major players, Mindful Materials included, WELL and USGBC. So there's that connection there, and we're continuing to make that connection as we talk with, in particular, USGBC and their next version of LEED coming out. Or go down the road of credit specific. We call them criteria in version 2024, credit in 2019, but ultimately it has been an effective way for people. So I had one group in particular, it was a higher ed who wanted to really buckle down on chemistry. And so that they were looking at specific criteria around that. So again, it was a way for them to know that it was either class-based or disclosed or, inventoried correctly. And it was a good way for them to just put in their specs, keep everyone consistent. I'll leave this QR code up for a minute. There is RFP language that we suggest. Again, it's quite basic. If you ever want, I'm around and can talk to any of you and kind of help you tailor make something maybe for your company or even a particular project, because ultimately that sometimes is the route people have to take. But if you want to be a little bit more generic, this is an easy way to cut and paste something in as either preferred or required. So mindset there is pretty simple. It's just a matter of making sure that you can put something together and have at least a minimum expectation. Again, especially if you think level 1, and then as you progress, you can go into something even more if you decide you really want to kind of knock it out of the park, think level 3, or if you really want to push things, try to get level 4. Again, this is all down the road. I can't stress that enough because the standard just came out. We're trying to get that education started. And to date, products are just going to start transitioning over to the version 2024. So my other recommendation there is when you do this, kind of like probably if you've ever worked with LEED, where you have to say, hey, either it's LEED version, like is this product or this building going to be LEED V4, 4.1? Just keep in mind for at least a time you'll want to specify each version. So version 2019 or 2024 works until the products all transition over, which will take at least a year or two, just to let you know. With that, we're at the bottom of the hour, and I do want to open it up for questions. Hopefully there's a few questions out there. Give me a second as I've got to get my move this over a moment. Yeah, let's take a look and see if we have any questions. No questions yet. Any? Oh, does this apply? Thank you for a question. I always like questions. Does this apply to residential furniture? Yes, it does. We do not have a lot of residential people on there. We do have some. And then, of course, a lot of the crossover we do have is from our membership. I didn't really describe BIFMA at the beginning, but if you're not familiar, BIFMA is Business Institutional Furniture Manufacturers Association. And for many of its 50 some years now, it was primarily the commercial side. As you can all imagine, things have changed a lot in the last 5 years, and you see Miller Knoll's probably the best example, but you hear this from many others of companies getting into the residential side as well. So some of those companies have put residential furniture on there. We've had a little bit of interest in the residential market, primarily through the Amazon Climate Pledge Friendly program. So if you're one buying, in fact, I bought something for my son's room a couple of years ago or a year and a half ago around furniture that was residential minded for a desk in his room. And it was from the Climate Pledge Friendly program that had level certified products. So you do see some, but not too many. I use too many acronyms and you didn't say that, but I'm saying it and you're completely right. Okay, let me start with what some of the acronyms. I just described what BIFMA is. USGBC LEED, I'll start with kind of the green building side. USGBC and LEED are US Green Building Council. LEED is the Leadership in Energy and Environment. I believe it's been a while, but they're the green building side and the green building standard, WELL is the WELL standard, more focused on people. A couple other acronyms I've used is HPDs. That's Health Product Declaration. If you're not familiar with that, it's a little bit like your FDA label where you have the ingredients list. So we used to always say like an FDA label, like a food label, will have calories and various other impacts, how much sugar, those types of things. That we kind of considered was the EPD, the Environmental Product Declaration. So an Environmental Product Declaration is around carbon footprint and smog and ozone depletion and all those types of things and kind of those environmental impacts as a product is being built. And then the HPD, the Health Product Declaration, is the ingredients in the product. Is there any chemicals of concern? Is there any, what kind of plastics, things like that. Other than that, other acronyms I used, I'm just trying to think through that. I mentioned science-based targets, EPDs, HPDs. If I missed any, just shoot it in the chat and I will help you out where I can. So if I have a furniture package that is going out to bid in November 2025 and the client requires level 3, should I be referencing? That's a very good question. If you're putting out, so the question is, so if I have a furniture package that is going out to bid in November 2025 and the client requires level 3, should I be referencing following the 2019 standard, not 2024 in the RFP? The answer is yes, Stephanie. You can certainly add or 2024, but the reality is there will be very, very few products that are going to be version 2024 level 3 by November. So I would go with that as far as 2019. All right. And I saw a question, but I think it went in the chat. Oh, there we go. Does the EU and China have their own programs and standards? How does this program compare? Great question as well. So the EU has its own version of Level. In fact, it's called Level. It's done by a similar group to BIFMA, and they do have their own standard, but it's very similar. So you can always use their standard. It would be the EU level standard and program and certification. China does not. We actually do have a decent amount of products certified in China. I work with their standard setting organization. So we've had conversations about not really harmonization, because they do have a few green standards out there that could be applied to furniture, but nothing furniture specific. So right now, I say we're the leaders. I'm not saying that we have a large amount of product over there certified relative to what's built, but we are one of those that are out there. Okay, let me keep going. How do fabrics we select for BIFMA certified pieces? Oh, this is a great question. Okay, so the question is fabrics and how they are selected with BIFMA certified pieces. So the way level works is you're going to go through and get a representative product. You're going to look at the options within that product. So just to keep it simple, if you had a table and the table had a laminate, veneer, and glass, you would be looking at those options. Same with, say, a seating product, is you're going to be looking at it as a representative product, and let's just say that most common is polyester, but then they have 3 or 4 different materials that they also might put on there. There will be a general, and I'm going to use this carefully, there will be a general overview of those major material groups. So if it's, polyester and wool and whatever else, recycled this or that, that will be looked at, and there will be some general, and I say general for a reason, chemical screening. But if you're interested, so like to kind of look at, say, PVC or some of those other things, or some Prop 65 antimony type chemicals of concern, that's all going to be reviewed. But highly encourage you to kind of break out the surface, especially for fabrics, if there's some more deep dive questions you want to do. Because one thing that is not covered, other than the general product offered, is the dyes and some of the chemical or the color related chemistry. So when people get into some of those pieces, which we see people do, which is great, we recommend going to the maybe to the furniture manufacturer, who, with their help, you can probably, or maybe directly talk to the fabric manufacturer. So that textile group is extremely important. And in many cases, again, we can cover things like PFAS and some of the other things that we're concerned about, chemicals of concern, flame retardants. But what I recommend to people, if they're really diving into the textiles, is to talk to the textile manufacturer. All right. I am going to go back to that at the end. I'll try to get back and figure out where we need to go with the acronyms. But in the meantime, could you confirm the products which are currently in 2019 level will automatically be migrated over to their 2024 equivalent? Another great question. I love this question because it's not complicated, but it is not what's going to happen is companies are going to move from 2019 to 2024, and they have the choice when they recertify. So they get audited on an annual basis and they get recertified every 3 years. So theoretically, on their annual basis, they could decide to move to 2024, or they could wait till their recertification. Regardless, when they move, they will apply for whatever level they want. And to my earlier comments, they might go from a level 3 back to a level 2, or they might say, no, we're going to up our game and we're going to stay level 3, just as one example. So it's either going to be 2019 or 2024, and they'll migrate one to the other. I do think, again, some people will probably drop a little bit to level 2. Some obviously will take advantage of this in terms of like kind of pushing their sustainability program higher, maintain level 3, or even go from, let's say, a level 2 to a level 3. So new certificates, though, will be issued once they make that transition. So that's why, again, people are not there today. They might not need to make that transition because their audit doesn't come up until July of next year. So we do this, frankly, every 5 years, and it's just part of the program because it takes a while for people to kind of walk through the whole process. All right, do I have more? Oh, yeah. I've stumbled upon Ecomedes. Would you say they are top-notch in the field? We're biased a bit here because Ecomedes is actually running our registry. So if you go to the level registry I mentioned earlier, it is run by Ecomedes. They're a great partner of ours. I like what they do. We have a lot of manufacturers who use their services beyond even what the registry does, so they get into more of the details. and that's more of a paid for service, which is great. It helps the manufacturers and the designers connect on important things. I will tell you as well, though, there are several others in the field that are doing a great job. So again, I can kind of put on my unbiased hat for a minute and say there's some other ones out there that are doing a great job. But Ecomedes has been around a long time and does an excellent job with providing data, as especially for us and for Level. Any other questions? Just looking, I don't see any. As far as the other acronyms go, I might just have to connect with you offline because I'm trying to figure out where I'm sure I missed some. I'm not disagreeing with that, but I'm not sure exactly where. So by all means, I can put my email in the chat, and then certainly I'll do that in just a second if you want to hang on. Oh, here's a few more. Here's a question too. I just see, like practice green health, could there be an end user forum set up where companies can align around what their company standards might be? It would be helpful to know what others are doing. So yeah, I'm looking at the chat right now to Melissa. The group I would point you toward is Mindful Materials. If you're not familiar with Mindful Materials, that's really what they were set up to do. Again, I have a background with them, but ultimately this is going, I will give you the very brief history. HKS many years ago had that same request, and then went out to a number of other people that spun into a group that eventually spun into the nonprofit Mindful Materials. And they are doing a great job, in my opinion. Again, I'm biased, doing a great job of bringing people together to have those conversations. So if you want any information on them, I can give you that, but just a quick look up can do that as well. I'll put putting my email in the chat too, if anyone has any questions along those lines. All right, sorry for the bit of a rough start there as I was on mute, but any other questions or oh, here we go. There we go. Product categories. Is there like a single unified furniture products related category registry out there? To my knowledge, there is not. There's not we have product category rules for seating, for tables, workspaces, and storage. But the program operators, is getting into some of the more details here. But those program operators have their own. Building Transparency is trying to put something together. And I have a feeling they will in the future. And I know, what's the group? I can think of her. I can see her name. Terry Swack is the person, but she has her group that I just can't. The name is escaping me. But there are some out there that are trying to put things together, but we don't have a repository. Sustainable Minds. Thank you, Amy. Actually, it's escaping me, but thank you. A lot of sustainability groups out there. So yeah, Sustainable Minds is probably where I would send you if you're looking for consolidated place. But it's been something that I think is being worked on. Again, there's conversations at Mindful Materials about that as well. They're great questions, and I appreciate the help. All right. Okay, it's 1:45. I'll wait another couple minutes. Obviously, I'm sure some people have dropped off, but if there's anything else, let me know. Again, just a plug for the future, we will be doing more conversation. There's my email anyway. I should have put that up a while ago. We will be doing more education along this line, so happy to engage with groups more on an individual level or a firm level, those types of things. BIFMA does this type of education a lot, so happy to work with you. All right, well, thank you all. And yes, I see some thank yous and appreciate the time. Have a great afternoon. For most of you, I think it's afternoon. And I'm sure we'll talk to you again.